Hey! This is going to be the first in a new series of videos where each time I'll take a character that's been designed by one of my favourite artists or illustrators, bring it into After Effects, and then rig up the limbs for that character as quickly but as faithfully as I can using Limber. I'm not going to rehearse these, they're a bit off the cuff and I might make some mistakes along the way, but hopefully you'll be able to learn from my techniques and then apply that to your own character rigging projects in the future. So this character, or rather these two characters, have been given to me by the guys over at Persistent Peril. They're based down on the south coast of the UK, and they have some really lovely work on their website and a lot more on their Instagram. So give them a follow and check out their work. And yeah, there's some really lovely stuff there. So these two characters that I've got were in a single Illustrator file, and they were just in 2 layers. So the first thing I've had to do is work in Illustrator to break out different parts of the bodies to separate layers. So I haven't gone into too much detail with the parts that aren't limbs. So the dog's head is just 1 layer, and then for his hands I've separated those out, and the arms, you can see that's just a layer there. The other hand, the other arm is actually in 2 layers because there's one behind the body and then the sort of lower part of that arm is in front of it like that. So his right arm had to have 2 layers, and then I separated out the feet, but the legs I've just left as a single layer. And there's his other leg, and then the bird is even simpler. I've just got 1 layer for the body and head and everything, and then 1 layer each for these 2 legs. So that's how I've set up the Illustrator file. I'm going to save that, then I'm going to come over to After Effects and import it here like this. I'm going to import it as a composition with layer sizes retained like this. And then when I double click this, you'll see we have the characters in After Effects. Now the first thing I normally do when I import artwork like this is I take the comp, I duplicate it, and I put the original one back inside the folder with all the layers. That way I know that whatever I do to this comp, the duplicate one, I can always get back to where the layers were laid out originally without having to sort of re-import it and everything. So all the information about anchor points and positions and things of these layers is retained. So I'll close that comp, and then in this new one, which it's decided to call VO4, so I'll just call that VO3 copy in this case, I'm now going to kind of work with these layers. The first thing I would probably do is to turn on this continuous rasterization switch for all the layers so they stay nice and sharp. And then let's just dive straight into the dog's legs. So I like to have this column over here. So where is one of his legs? There, the left leg. Let's solo that. And the way that this leg looks is something that to me is going to be most easily replicated by using one of the limbs from the limb library. Let's import the limb library. So I'll use this button here. There's the limb library that's going to come in when I click OK. And then inside the limb library in the bone-based folder, there's one called 3-part bone with foot. So I think this is animated. Yeah, so you can see that, you know, this has these 2 separate colors for the upper and the lower part of the leg, the path, and it's also got this extra sort of foot thing, which is all inside this limb layer. It's not a separate layer, that foot. So we don't want the foot in this instance, I don't think, because it's not going to quite work. So if I dig down inside this limb layer, then I can take this foot group and just delete it. That also means that I can delete all these sort of foot and toe controller expressions that were on that limb layer. So I'm going to delete those. And then I've just got a sort of bone that's in 2 parts now. See, they've got this lower and this upper, and I can turn them on and off separately or whatever. And that's a pretty good start for getting the dog's leg here. So to get this pose right, the quickest way now that I tend to do these things is either with the 3 circles and the rig and pose button, or with the path to bone. And since we don't have those circles set up, I'm going to use the pen tool to just draw out a path. So I'm going to click here and then say there and then there, like that. I've got a horrible pink fill I'll get rid of, and then just going to sort of move this around to try and get the angles about right. Don't need to be too fussy, but something like that seems about okay. Notice that when I when I drew the path, I started with the hip. That's really important if you're using the path to bone button, because otherwise you'll end up with your start and end controls the wrong way around. So now we've got that path. I'm going to click path to bone. It's going to want to call it left or right or something, and this is the left one, so that's okay. And then I've now got things where I want them. I'm not going to worry about this being yellow and too thin and having the wrong type of cap and joint and everything, because we're going to change all that later anyway. This is really just about getting in the right place and having them the right length. So now I'll select that original shape layer that I drew and delete it. I'm going to come back to the 3-part bone with foot. I'm going to select the limb layer. I'm going to use Limber's copy button. Then I'm going to come back to the dog and bird comp, select the left leg and hold down Alt and click paste. I need to hold that Alt button in order to preserve my lengths. Although if I hadn't done it, if I just done paste, you see we'll get the curvature and the lengths are all wrong and everything. So let's just do it again, holding Alt and paste, and that's all worked. Now obviously the dog's leg, the original leg, had the upper part sort of on top of the lower part, so I can quite easily do that by just moving these 2 groups around. So I just drag that upper group over the lower group, and that's now gonna look right. And then if I dig down inside this upper group, I can play around with this stroke property. So let's make it the right width, which is going to be something like that. And then if I just turn the solo off, I'll be able to get a pink color, pop it back on, and then the lower, I'm going to twirl these down. This stroke here wants to be that color, and the width of it is probably about there somewhere. Obviously this is too long at the moment, because if you remember, our original artwork had this little sort of sticky bit at the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this path that's inside the lower group, and I'm going to add a trim paths, and then I'm going to trim down the end until it kind of matches, which will be about there somewhere. This is starting to really, look like the original now. So if we turn off the original, we'll see the only thing that's missing is that sticky bit at the end. And let's just undo that so it's back again. So now to get that last bit, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to duplicate this whole lower group here by selecting it and then doing Command D, and now I've got a duplicate of that. And in lower 2, I'm actually just going to delete the trim paths and change the stroke width down to whatever that should be, and I'll change the cap to a butt cap. And now if I solo that layer on its own, I think you'll be able to see it looks pretty close to the original. Let's just twirl it up and turn on the left foot maybe, because that's what it's got to join onto. Yeah, that's a pretty good representation of what we want. So now we can either parent the foot to the ankle controller or vice versa. Obviously, if we parent the foot to the ankle controller, then we'll be able to take advantage of Limber's rotate end property. So with that in mind, let's actually just turn that up. So here's my left ankle, and if I go into the dynamics and crank up the rotate end, it's going to point in the right direction. I tell you what I'll do actually, I'll probably convert the foot to a shape layer so that we can edit that path and that curve on that foot sort of live in After Effects. So I'm going to do create shapes and vector layer, and now I've got the outlines, and I will parent that to the ankle like that. Now I can take the original foot, delete that layer, and when I move this ankle around, that leg sort of pretty much works how I want it to. Okay, so the other leg is similar, but it doesn't have this separate color for the sort of bottom half, but it does have this sort of stick ending. So probably the easiest thing in this situation is just going to be to duplicate the leg we've just made and then just tweak this upper part of the lower part. So let's select the left ankle and hit duplicate, and we'll call this one right. And now we could put this in position down there somewhere, and we could move the hip perhaps. It's actually not bad where it is. Maybe the two hips should be in the same place. So the right leg, I would now come in here, twirl it down, and then just deal with this lower group. So that trim paths could come up a bit like that, and then the stroke itself could be this color. Has that worked? Yes. And it could be a bit wider. In fact, we kind of want it to be the same width as the upper. So what did we have there? 96. Let's just set that to be 96 as well. And you'll see it's kind of behind the thin purple stroke because that was on top. So I'm going to have to drag this lower on top of the lower two, and now it's going to look how we want it to. And then when we move, oops, that's moving the limb layer. Let's not do that. When we move the controller like that, it'll behave kind of normally, but I'm not entirely sure about where the joint is because of course we used the same lengths from the other leg. So we've kind of got the look right here, but I'm not entirely sure that we've got the lengths right. So what we could do is kind of keep that in place, and we could go in and sort of tweak these settings here and try and get the length and the lower length and what have you until it kind of goes right. But it might be easier to just use the path to bone button again and make a whole new limb. So I'm going to turn all that off and then come back with my pen tool, make sure I've got no layer selected, and then draw a path from somewhere like here all the way down to there. And it's going to need to have a point, let's say there, something like that. And that's going to be dead straight, obviously, because I added that point after I'd drawn the start and end point, which is sort of a handy way of posing things like that. So now that we've got this selected, I can go path to bone. This is going to be the right leg, but I'll need to use a different name because we've already had that one. So I'm not going to call this dog -right. So we've now got the dog right leg in place, and then if I come back to this right leg that we composed earlier and turn that back on, I'll select the limb layer and I'll click copy, and I'll come back to the sort of better posed one and hold Alt and click paste. That's going to paste that that same limb into the sort of lengths and the pose that we drew out ourselves a minute ago. I can now delete that original drawn path, and actually the whole of the right leg that didn't have the word dog in front of it is now useless. So I just select one of those and then use Limber's select button. That'll select all the associated layers, and then I can hit delete, and that's now gone. So we've got pretty much what we want. I mean, we could just change that trim paths a little bit. I'll just hit UU and you'll see that, is that it there? Yes, let's just bring that down a bit. That's now obviously where that needs to be. And then we just need to we need to turn up the rotate end on that end controller, and then we need to parent the dog's right foot, which is there, to the end controller. In fact, what I probably should have done the other time is move this anchor point so that it's closer to where the controller is. So if I just zoom in and taking this layer, I'm going to hit Y for the kind of pan behind tool, or the anchor point tool, some people call it. And I'm going to place that anchor point pretty close to the middle of the controller. I don't think it really needs to be spot on. And then I can now parent the foot to the controller, and then when I move my limb around that foot, oh, we've got the clockwise the wrong way around. So let's undo that. Let's not parent that. Yeah, let's have that unparented. Take the right ankle, change the clockwise to -100%, so it goes that way. And oh, looks like I unparented the wrong thing. Let's just undo. That's good to know, because it also reminds me that I forgot to turn this into outlines. Getting it all wrong here. So let's go back and do create shapes and vector layer. Now I've got the outlines. Get rid of the illustrator layer. The outlines have the right anchor point. Yes, they do. The right ankle still got the clockwise wrong. Let's put that over to -100%. Now it's all working fine. Cool. Let's zoom out, and then the original dog's legs that were made in Illustrator, we can just delete now like that. The limb layers will need to go down behind the body, obviously, not the bird's body, the dog's body, like that. And then the feet layers, the hips, we can pull those down as well. They'd probably end up parented to the body, so that we can move the body around like this. And then we are pretty much done. I should really change the name of these layers, because we have dog at the beginning of the right leg, but we don't have dog at the beginning of the left leg. So with one of those left leg layers selected, I can hold Alt, I think it is, and click on rename, and I can change that left to say dog left. Okay, and hopefully, yes, all of those left leg layers are now called dog something or other, and that's good. So we could move on to the dog's arms, or we could do the bird's legs. Let's do the bird's legs, because they're going to be easier and quicker. So because the I can turn all these dog layers off. Because the bird's legs are already just a single path in Illustrator, we can actually convert those to shape layers with the create shapes and vector layer command. Get rid of the originals, and then now these guys, assuming they go in the right direction, I didn't actually check this beforehand, we can turn these into the legs using the path to bone button. But of course, these paths have integrated feet, which our path to bone button doesn't support. So if I select my pen tool, you'll see that I could just come in here and delete this bottom point. So get rid of that foot layer. If I wanted to keep the foot, I could sort of duplicate the layer and then, you know, delete the leg part on one layer and the foot part on the other. But if you happen to have a copy of PenPal, then that's a bit easier, because there's a button that does that. So I'll just select this point in PenPal, come up here to the points tab, and you see this little button here, break path at selected points. I can just click that, and I get a warning saying cannot break on the first or last point, which is funny because it's not the first or the last point. So let me just maybe, what's going on in here? Let's have a look at this layer. So, interesting. Oh, it actually is already broken up. I didn't even know that. Okay, so is the right leg the same? Yes, okay, how convenient. So I don't get to do my PenPal sell-in. Let's close that, and we've actually already got what I was aiming for, because these two groups are the feet separated out. So, okay, let's take the bird left leg outlines. I think if we select the right group, which is this group 2, we can use the path to bone button. No, it's not selecting, it's to do with which one's first, I think. So let's drag the group 2, which is the leg, up above group 1, and in the other one, the same thing. In fact, what's also potentially a problem is that in this second leg, I think the path is actually only got 2 points. Yeah, so we're going to need to add a point for the knee. So let's just put a knee, say there. And then in the other one, I think we were right there. So with this layer selected, I should be able to hit path to bone and call this bird left. Okay, hopefully, yes, we've now got the bird's leg as we wanted. And then the original layer, which got turned off automatically, I can just turn that back on and delete that first group. So it leaves us with just the foot. The anchor point's in the wrong place, but we can come and manually sort of stick that somewhere where we want it. And then I could now parent that foot layer to the ankle. Let's leave that for now, and then let's do the other one. So the right leg, we're gonna take this, select the layer, and then click path to bone, and this is going to be called bird right. Okay, and then we now have, see, this one's the wrong way around, because this controller here should really be the end controller, the ankle, but Limber's called it the hip, which means that the path was in the wrong direction. So I'm gonna undo until I get back, undo quick bone, and now what I'm going to need to do is reverse the direction of this path, which is actually another handy opportunity to mention pen pal, because for reversing path direction, normally you can just use these little toggles here. So let me show you what I mean. I'll add a trim paths, and I'll trim the end. Now that's trimming what I think, or what I want to be the start of the path, right? But it's the end, because the direction of the path goes that way. It starts down here, that's the first vertex, and it goes up towards the hip, which is the opposite of how I want it. So normally we could just use this toggle here, it says reverse path direction on, and we can do that, and that's all very well, but that doesn't actually change which is the first vertex, right? We know that because if we select the path, if I just solo it, you'll see that the first vertex has a sort of double square, right? This little tiny little square here, tiny little square here. This one here has got 2 squares, and that's the first vertex. That's what that 2 square thing means. And when I click this toggle here, that doesn't change. This is still the first vertex, but this toggle just tells it to treat it in the sort of opposite direction. Now, unfortunately, Limber doesn't know about this little toggle here, and it doesn't take account of it. So what we need to do is to truly reverse the direction of the path. Now, weirdly, that's quite a difficult thing to do. In After Effects, there isn't really a sort of native way of doing that. There is a little third-party script out there somewhere which floats around on Twitter and seems to disappear every year or two. So what I use, of course, is pen pal, and then in the paths tab, I just need to select my path, and this button here with the 2 arrows is reverse direction. So if I click that, you'll see that now this vertex up here has got the 2 squares, and the trim is working on the end, what I want to be the end, and the toggle is still set to the default, the first one on the left there. So we're done there with pen pal, and we can get rid of that trim paths, and we can now do our path to bone, and we should get the end controller on the ankle. So bird right, yeah, that's the right name. there it goes. And now the ankle controller is at the bottom. And that's a rather sort of convoluted way of explaining what you'd need to do if you've drawn your paths the wrong way round for the path to bone button. Okay, so let's unsolo those layers. We'll twirl up that leg. Let's take both these leg layers and drag them down where the other ones were. And then this one here, if you remember, we deleted the leg, so it's actually just a foot. So I'm going to call that bird L foot. And then the one below has been turned off by Limbo when we use the path bone button. So I'll turn it back on. I'll delete the first group, which was the leg, which you won't see deleting because obviously we've got the Limbo leg now. So now we have this layer being just the foot again. Let's move the anchor point like we did on the other one over to there, unsolo it. I'm going to rename it a bird of foot, and I'm going to parent these to the ankle controllers. Let's move all the bird stuff down above the bird body like that. The hips I'll parent to the body. In fact, I will turn them off. And the ankles, I want to, I think I'm going to aim them along the leg like I did for the dog. So in the Dynamics tab, I'll crank up the rotate end, and the left ankle, I will parent the left foot to that ankle, and then the right ankle, I will crank up the rotate end, and I will parent the right foot to the right ankle. There we go. Now I can move these layers around. I've got them both selected at the same time, so it looks a bit weird, but we can do that, and you can see the legs. You can see the feet rotating as they should. Hit undo, back to our default pose. Okay, so let's look back at the dog and the arms of the dog. Okay, so looking at the dog's left arm, it's got this real kind of curvature to it, and at the same time it's slightly tapered, right? So that is something that the sort of new tapered strokes that Adobe added to After Effects about a year ago would probably be ideal for. So I'm going to come back to the limb library, and I'm just going to check out this one called Tapered Bone. Now that looks pretty close to me, so I'm just going to need to play with the colors and the lengths and the rounding of that, I think. So what I'll do actually is I'm going to paste this this layer itself here. I'm going to just hit copy, then I'm going to come back here to my limb library comp, and I'm going to just paste that in there. Soloed, where's it gone? It's down there. Let's just bring that up to here so I can sort of see the kind of sizes and things that we want. Now, because this is curved, it's probably going to be easier to pose things manually rather than using the path to bone button like we did before. Let me turn off that adaptive resolution so the screen doesn't go all blocky. And if I just put those controllers somewhere like that, and then what have we got here? They're both, it's quite long. This is obviously too big. So let's see what happens when we bring that down to kind of, maybe they're both 100. Actually, it was better before. So that's something like that looks about right. So yeah, so let's tweak that start size down. Let's tweak the middle size down. And then the end size, nearly almost right. Let's just make that a bit smaller. We've got to make this fit with the hand, haven't we? So controller's kind of getting in the way a bit. I'll just put the limb layer above the controller, I think. And then, where are we? Yeah, the end size. I'm going to make that a bit bigger. I might have to tweak this when I get there. So this is kind of looking okay. Yeah, the curve is a little different, but I think it's probably close enough. What I need to do now is change my colors and the splits. So let's say the upper color is that dark blue. That looks all right. The middle color, it's going to need to be yellow. And then the lower color is also going to need to be yellow. And then the rounding is going to need to be 0 in both cases. And the lower split, there kind of isn't one, so we'll put that on to 0, I think. And then the upper split, it looks like it's about right already, somewhere there. Let's just solo that again. Whoops, no, let's solo that again. Yeah, that's not far off now. And what I'm going to do is I am going to just copy and paste the whole set of limb layers directly. I'm not going to use Limber's copy and paste button because I've kind of got it exactly how I want it. It's posed and everything, right? So I've got exactly what I want here in my limb library comp. So I don't need to recreate another limb and then paste the style in. I'm just going to copy and paste all 3 layers. I'm going to select those limb layers. In fact, what I'll do is I will parent the ankle and the hip to the arm, the dog's arm layer, and then I'll be able to move that around and my limb will move with it. And that same parenting structure and everything will still be there when we get back to the other comp. So let's select all 4 layers. Obviously don't need that text. This is now just going to use the After Effects copy and paste. So I'm going to come here and do copy like this. And then I'm going to come back to the dog and bird and I'm going to do edit paste like that. And where have they gone? I think they're probably shot off a bit. Yeah, they're up there. So I need to get this dog L arm, the one that I have just pasted, and I can move around. I need to get that exactly on top of the other one, right? So the easiest way of doing that precisely is to parent it to the other one and hold shift as I do that. I think this will work. So that was the original one. So if I'm holding shift, I'm going to let go and blip, that's gone exactly where I need it to go. Now that that's there, I can turn off the one we just pasted. We can get rid of the original one as well. So now we've just got this limber arm in there. Let's just unsolo those so it fits in with the rest of the comp. And obviously if we were going to move around that controller, that's going to kind of do what we need it to do. These layers are shorter because the comp in the limb library wasn't the same duration, so I'm just going to pull those out. And then I'm going to need to again crank up the rotate end and parent the hand to that ankle controller. They've all got the wrong names, haven't they? They shouldn't be called left leg, ankle, and blah blah. It should be called arm. So let's change the name of these. Let's select arm in the drop down, and then with one selected, click the rename button. Let's rename them. That's good. And then the dog. Actually, let's call them. Well, have we got the right or the left here? No, that is the right one. But they do want to have that dog prefix there, I think. So I'm going to hold Alt and rename and call them dog left. Just good to keep your layers named properly. Okay, right. Dog left hand. That can now be parented to dog left wrist. And we can move that wrist around, and there goes the hand and everything, and that's all good. So the dog's right arm is something that I think we're going to have to do using the original artwork itself, rather than try and sort of replicate it with one of Limber's bones. So if I take this upper art layer and the lower art layer, and if I control click and go to create shapes and vector layer, that's going to give me these 2 shape layers that look just like the original artwork from Illustrator, but have these editable paths, and they can be rigged inside a limb layer. So I'm going to use the rig and pose button to do the whole kind of caboodle at the same time. So if I take an ellipse tool, and I'm going to hold down Alt, I think it is, and drag out this. No, not Alt, it's Command, and drag out this ellipse layer. Let's make that quite big like that. Then if I hit V, have I got the anchor point in the right layer? Yeah, I do. I'm going to put that there where the shoulder is. Then I'm going to duplicate the layer and put this one down here somewhere. I'm going to make him smaller. I can actually just use the scale here. I'm literally just dragging the layer. I'm not scaling the shape group inside it. This is just a smaller scale. That might be a bit too small. Let's make him a bit bigger, like that. Yeah, and then let's change the color for yellow, and then let's duplicate it again, and then this one, hold down shift, scale it, something like that maybe. Should we solo the lower outlines and the circle that I'm working on so I can just see? Yeah, that's helpful. There we go. Right, so now I've got these 3 layers, three ellipses, and I've got my upper R and my lower R. So as long as I select things in the right order, which is always starting with the shoulder or the hip and going down through the elbow and the wrist, I'm holding Command as I select those, and then I'm going to select the upper outlines and the lower outlines, and then when I click on this rig and pose button, hopefully everything is in the right place. That all looks good. It's all kind of inverted. We're going sort of bottom up here and we're going top down here, so that's a bit confusing. But when I click OK, it wants to call it something. This is going to be dog right arm, so that's correct. Click OK, and it's going to rig me up a single limber layer here with the appearance that we want, except that it's got the upper in front of the lower. So if I just move that lower group above the upper group like that, it's now going to look pretty much how we want. And if we move this wrist around, you'll see that kind of works. Obviously, we've got a bit of an issue with the way that the split and everything works there, but we'll sort that out in a minute. Let's just get rid of all those layers that we use to build that limb with the rig and pose button. So all of these 5 layers here that we just used, I'm just going to delete all those. Then I want to sort of sort out that that sort of upper arm split problem there. So I'll set a position keyframe with Alt P. Oh, what am I doing? This is on the wrong layer. I'm setting position keyframes on the limb layer. That's not right, is it? Stop that. There we go. Position on the wrist controller, and then 10 frames forwards, and I'm going to move that down. This is just so that I can get back to my original pose, but also so I can see what's going on inside here. I need to tweak the colors. I think the middle color should have been... No, that's not right. Okay, so it must be the split. Yeah, let's pull this upper split back somewhere, maybe about there. And then that's actually not too bad. I just need to sort of play around with the art that was rigged. So in this dog right arm, should we change the layer color for something green, and we'll see things a bit better. I'm going to select my pen tool, and then I'm going to play around with this Bezier here just so that it sort of meets up a bit better. If I just hold Alt and drag that out to make it curved, now it kind of follows in with that line a bit better, and that doesn't look too bad. The problem really is just the anti-aliasing on here, so perhaps if I pull this out a little bit and just tweak that back up to somewhere like there. Okay, so zoom out and come back to the original pose. That's looking pretty good now. What we need to do is kind of split it into the upper and the lower half and separate them. So what I will do here is I will turn off the lower group like that, and then I'm going to drag this right arm. In fact, I'm going to rename this right arm to upper, and I'm going to drag it down to wherever the original right arm upper is, which is there in the layer stack. That's the original one. And then I'm going to have to make an orphan limb layer. And an orphan limb layer is where we just use After Effects' native duplicate command like this to make a duplicate of the limb layer. Now this limb layer, the new one, will still work, but Limber doesn't know about it. This one we will need to turn on the lower group and delete the upper group, and we'll need to rename it because it's not the upper, it's the lower, and we need to put it in the right place, which is wherever the original lower arm was, like that. And that should all work just fine now, you know, as far as things go. Obviously there are limits, you know, if we do that, it's not going to work. So this kind of thing, you know, it does happen, and obviously that also doesn't really look quite right. So if we were going to animate the arm going out somewhere like that, we'd probably have to animate these paths or something in order to sort of make that work. But for the purposes of this tutorial, we've got a pretty good replication of the original arm now. And what we could do is we could animate this with FK actually, which might be nice. So in this situation, I'm going to kill that keyframe for position, and I would then add an FK controller. Actually, let's parent the hand first. Where is that? The right hand. Let's put that in front. It is in front of the right arm. Yeah, let's parent that to the right wrist, and then the right wrist, I would add the FK controller, which also reparents the hand to the FK controller. Now, when I crank up the FK, it's going to go wrong. But if I match the FK to the IK with that button, it'll be right again. And then now I could animate just a sort of a subtle kind of like bobbing up and down of both these upper and lower limbs on FK, and then sort of offset the lower keyframes from the upper one slightly, and we get a nice kind of wave effect running through that arm. Let's zoom out, turn on the other layers, and we're pretty much finished. I'll just delete these two arm layers that are left over and not being used anymore, and we're done. Thanks for watching. I really like rigging up different styles of character using Limbo. So I'm keen to make more of these videos, but I want them to be useful for you too. So leave a comment down below letting me know what you found useful or what you didn't. And if there's a certain character or type of character that you'd like to see rigged with Limbo, let me know down there and I'll see if I can take that on board. They'll all be here on the aescripts YouTube channel, so you can subscribe to that to keep an eye on it, and we'll see you next time. Bye.